Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulihi wa ba'd. طيب إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. حياكم الله, مساءكم الخير, مساءكم طيبين. I hope you're all doing well. Good evening to you all. Do the corner for them, yeah? Please. So inshallah ta'ala, اليوم في هذا المساء, today, this evening, we shall be going through a book called Taysir al-Ilah, which is the facilitation of the Shahadah, the explanation by Shaykh Ubaid al-Jabari. And today, we shall not be starting the actual shurut, the actual conditions, but we're going to be going through the muqaddimah, yeah? The introduction, as I've already explained, and its influence, La ilaha illallah, on society, not just upon one's own self. As we all know, it's a statement which enters a person into Islam. We understand that. And if a person dies upon it, truly acting by it, he enters Jannah, inshaAllah. But it's also important, you know, from the angle of how it will benefit the community in terms of acting upon it, how it will rectify society. Yeah. As I was mentioning before, just before, you know, we started recording, you know, you still find till today mosques and imams still saying that La ilaha illallah means there's no God but Allah. This is an incorrect translation. Rather, what it actually means is ifradullahi bil ibadah. La ilaha illallah, la ma'buda bihaqqin illallah. There's no deity truly worthy of worship except Allah. And this is the true meaning of what it entails. There's no deity truly worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah ta'ala, today's lesson will be relatively quite short. Yeah, simplistic. Inshallah, the corner is ready for the sisters, yeah, if they want to transition to that part. Yeah. So today's lesson will be relatively short, concise, and to the point, hopefully. هذا القول مبني على قول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And that statement is based upon the statement of the Messenger of Allah. يسروا ولا تعسروا وبشروا ولا تنفروا. What does that mean? It means make things easy and do not make things hard. Yeah? وبشروا ولا تنفروا. Give glad tidings and do not repel the people. So we want to, you know, have the people understand what we're going through, inshallah ta'ala. And this is important, especially if you're like a revert or you're new to like istiqamah, embracing Islam, and you really want to understand what this statement means. This is the book to do. Yeah, and even if you happen to be a Muslim, you know, raised Muslim, or you know, you've done the book before, it's still well worth doing. Why? Because of the fawaid, the benefits in which we are going to extract from such a simple book. Yeah, something so simple, we shall, inshallah ta'ala, extract many, many benefits. Okay, without further ado, آثار لا إله إلا الله. So this is the effect of La ilaha illallah. And this particular muqaddimah, yeah, this introduction is taken from Shaykh Fawzan. And this particular introduction is actually taken from Shaykh Fawzan, hafidhullah ta'ala. Okay. And this book, or the article in which it happens to be from, is called في تفسير كلمة التوحيد. في تفسير كلمة التوحيد, in the explanation of the كلمة التوحيد, which is La ilaha illallah. And he starts and begins with لهذه الكلمة إذا قيلت بصدق. So if this word إذا قيلت بصدق, meaning if it is said with sidq, truthfulness, with ikhlas, yeah, and sincerity. وعمل بمقتضاها ظاهرا وباطنا, and by way of action which effectively runs alongside what it necessitates. آثار حميدة على الفرد والجماعة. It has excellent effects upon an individual and on the society, the congregation of people. And most importantly, من أهمها اجتماع الكلمة التي ينتج عنها حصول القوة للمسلمين والانتصار على عدوهم. So what does that mean? He goes on to say, اجتماع الكلمة, bringing the Muslims together upon a unified statement, and an outcome of strength, قوة للمسلمين والانتصار على عدوهم, and likewise ascertaining victory over their enemy. So this is the reality of this statement. You hear many of us say this day in, day out, but when the ummah as a whole acts upon it truly, then this is the reality of what it entails. لأنهم يدينون بدين واحد وعقيدة واحدة. And that's because they're united upon one religion and one creed, one belief. كما قال سبحانه وتعالى واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. And as Allah mentioned, you can move in if you want, brothers, inshallah ta'ala, yeah? Come in a bit more. Yeah? As Allah says in the Quran, وَاعْتَسِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And all of you together hold firmly onto the rope of Allah and do not be disunited. As we mentioned before in Usul al-Sitta, what's Hablullah? Who remembers? The rope of Allah. What does it mean? Quran and Sunnah. What else? It could mean the way of the Salaf in a particular way. Imām, the Quran. So we have, numerous things being said about a particular thing, and we call that within Islam, who remembers? Ikhtilaf al-tanawwu'. So it's an ikhtilaf, but it's not the ikhtilaf al-tadad. So we have ikhtilaf al-tadad, which is a discrepancy which cannot be harmonized. And then we have ikhtilaf al-tanawwu', where there are differing narrations, but they do not contradict. Does that make sense? So ikhtilaf al-tanawwu', meaning various things being said about it, not contradicting. And then you have ikhtilaf al-tadad, which is various things being said, but all opposing the meaning each other. For example, Quran, Imām, Sunnah, these are all things which are, well structured and bodily put together. They all mean the same thing. Imām comes from the Quran and what have you, yeah? Okay. وَاعْتَسِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Yeah, Allah said, hold firmly to the rope of Allah and do not be, disunited. وقال تعالى هو الذي أيدك بنصره وبالمؤمنين وألف بين قلوبهم. Allah said, it is He who supported you with His help. It is He who supported you with His help. And the believers وبالمؤمنين وألف بين قلوبهم. And likewise brought together their hearts. ألف بين قلوبهم. He brought together their hearts, the Sahaba. Yeah, رضوان الله عليهم. وَلَوْ أَنْفَقْتَ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. And if you had spent all that is within the earth, if you had spent all that which is in the earth, مَا أَلَّفْتَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِهِمْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ أَلَّفَ بَيْنَهُمْ إِنَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. So if you did this, you could not have brought their hearts together, but Allah brought them together. Indeed, He is exalted in might and wise. والاختلاف في العقيدة يسبب التفرق والنزاع والتناحر. So basically, differing in regards to aqidah, which is faith, which is, creed, is a reason for at-tafarruq, the opposite of unity, being split. splitting up into parties and sects and what have you. Yeah? So at-tafarruq is what comes about when people differ in aqidah. Yeah? وَالنِّزَاعَ and controversy. وَالتَّنَاحُرْ and this brings about dispute. And as we mentioned, at-tafarruq, who remembers some of the linguistic meanings behind tafarruq for those who are with us in Usul Sittah? What does it mean linguistically? It just means inqisam, which means to basically section off. It just means inqisam. Yeah, one party going that way and one party going that way, for example. That's lughatan. هو ضد الاجتماع. And it is the opposite of coming together, unity. So, at-tafarruq is the opposite of ijtima'a, coming together, simple. Istilahan, so in regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's legislation, what does it mean now? It's simple, you all probably know this. هو مخالفة السنة. It's basically opposing the sunnah ومفارقة الجماعة. Yeah? في أصول الاعتقاد. And likewise, opposing, splitting away from the jama'ah في أصول الاعتقاد, in the principles of i'tiqad, creed. فلا يجمع الناس سوى عقيدة الإيمان والتوحيد التي هي مدلول لا إله إلا الله. So, the people, will not be upon the correct creed. Meaning nothing other than the correct creed, i.e. faith and tawheed, which is the indicated meaning of the Shahadah, can unite the people. Yeah? It's only the correct creed, aqidatul sahiha, which can actually unite the Muslims correctly. وَأَعْتَبِرْ ذَلك بحالة العرب قبل الإسلام وبعده. So one only needs to consider the Arabs in the state they were before Islam and after it. So the first point, what does, the statement, what is the athar, what is the effects of La ilaha illallah upon the community? So we're going to go into the first one now. So this is probably worth writing down. Yeah? توفر الأمن وطمأنينة في المجتمع الموحد. What does that mean? It brings about security, safety, and tranquility in the Muslim community. الذي يدين بمقتضى لا إله إلا الله. So for the one that takes this up religiously, this statement, this is what it will bring. Meaning safety and tranquility in a unified society that adheres religiously to the Shahadah. لأن كل من أفراده يأخذ ما أحل الله له. That's because each member of society will take or will partake in whatever has been made lawful for him or her. ويترك ما حرم الله عليه تفاعلا مع عقيدتي التي تملي عليه ذلك. And then leave whatever has been unlawful for them in accordance to their creed that instructs them to do so as much. فينكف عن الاعتداء والظلم والعدوان. Also, withholding from any transgression, oppression, or hostility. Yeah? It also encompasses this meaning. ويحل محل ذلك التعاون والمحبة والموالاة في الله عملا بقول إنما المؤمنون إخوة. And instead, replacing that with aiding one another and allegiance to his statement, إنما المؤمنون إخوة. Verily, only the believers are brothers. Yeah, I'm going to mention this benefit now. It's a linguistic benefit, lughatan. The innama here is adatul hasr. Yeah, adatul hasr. So basically, the tool used in this verse is called adatul hasr. Yeah, It restricts only those mentioned in the verse to doing the very thing that comes, meaning being brothers. And you're going to have to remember that, because later on, in one of the shurut, in one of the conditions, that will come, and that will be beneficial. Yeah? Innama adatu hasr. It's from those things which restrict. Yeah, hasr means to restrict. Okay. يظهر هذا جليا في حالة العرب قبل أن يدينوا بهذه الكلمة وبعدما دانوا بها. This becomes clear, جليا. This becomes clearly apparent when comparing or considering the state of the Arabs before they religiously adhered to the statement and after embraced it. This is once again going back to La ilaha illallah. كانوا من قبل أعداء. So before, they were opponents to one another. متناحرين يفتخرون بالقتل والنهب والسلب. So, they were constantly fighting one another. Yeah, يتفخرون. Meaning they would boast about, killing, ransacking, looting. These are the sort of things they will be doing those times there. فلما دانوا بها أصبحوا إخوة متحابين. So when they, embraced Islam, and adhered to this statement, they became brothers to one another. As Allah mentions in the Quran, Muhammad Rasulullah وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنُهُم. So, Muhammad Rasulullah, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah. وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ. And those who are with him are stern against the non-Muslims. Yeah? رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنُهُم. Yes, merciful amongst themselves they are. Once again, this is the Sahaba. وقال تعالى واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا. So, remember Allah's favor upon you all when you were all opponents and enemies to one another. فألف بين قلوبكم. Yeah. And Allah brought about your hearts together in faith and Imām. فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. And by His favor, you became brothers to one another. Okay, so the third point he brings now. Yeah? The third point. In terms of the influence and the effects of La ilaha illallah being implemented properly in society, he now goes on to say, حصول السيادة والاستخلاف في الأرض. What does that mean? Attaining succession of authority, استخلاف. وصفاء الدين والثبوت أمام التيارات الأفكار المبادئ المختلفة. أمام تيارات الأفكار والمبادئ المختلفة. So, attaining succession of authority on this earth, purity of the religion, yes, purity of the religion, and resoluteness in the face of different opposing ideologies and parties and principles. Yeah? A lot of the time you always hear خصوصاً الخوارج talking about authority within the land and gaining, some sort of position within government or in office. But the problem is they go straight to the top. They don't work from the bottom. Yeah? As for DAARUSSUNNAH wal Jama'ah, we cultivate from the very bottom so that the whole of the community is raised upon one thing, not different versions of belief and faith. So when you get to the top, you start fighting. DAARUSSUNNAH, they cultivate from the very beginning. They allow their homes to be filled with La ilaha illallah, with the correct understanding of it. And then they allow that to flourish, like watering plants. You see the growth slowly push this way and push that way. That's the likeliness of La ilaha illallah. If it's planted and, reaped and sowed correctly, then it will grow. But as for these individuals, they go straight to the top, forgetting that the people at the bottom don't really know anything about deen. So when they hear the deen, it's like they don't want it anymore because they were never educated about it. And that's the problem. We educate the layman, the student of knowledge, the butcher, whoever it may be, we educate them from the bottom. And this is how it starts. This is how true authority is established upon Allah's earth. And Allah makes a promise in His noble book. He mentions, وَعَدَ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made a promise to those that believe and work righteous actions. وَعَدَ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لِيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. يَسْتَخْلِفَنَّ لَهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. He will surely grant them succession to authority. Istikhlaf. يَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. He will surely grant them succession, meaning authority upon the earth, just as He granted it to those before them. وَلِمَكِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ دِينُهُمُ الَّذِي ارْتَضَى لَهُمْ. Therein, their religion which He has preferred for them, ارْتَضَى لَهُمْ. He will surely يُبَدِّلَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ خَوْفِهِمْ أَمَنًا. And He will do this and substitute for them. He will substitute for them, after fear, security. It's this ayah that brings about these things. So they work, first and foremost, righteous actions. They work, first and foremost, righteous actions after believing correctly. This is a promise from Allah. Then they'll be granted authority, istikhlaf. Just like those before them. And then He will substitute for them after fear, security. I'm going to bring some of the proofs for this now. So going back to safe heart. So Allah mentions in the Quran, and remember when Ibrahim said, "Oh my Lord, make this, i.e. Mecca, a secure place, a city, a secure city, and provide its people with fruits. Man amana minhum billahi wal yawmil akhir." Whoever of them, from the believers, meaning those that believe in Allah and the last day. So this is the point in which we derive our proof from for safety and security. And notice how something has happened here. Ibrahim alayhi salam has asked for security first and foremost. Why the ulama mentioned? Why did he ask for security first? The reason being is that without security, you cannot establish ibadah. Without security within a land, safety, ibadah cannot be established. So Ibrahim alayhi salam began with dua for amin. Amin is security. Before dua of provision, rizq. Because amin is a necessity and the people would not be able to effectively enjoy their rizq, their provision, if they are in a state of fear. Halat al-khawf. If there's fear, if there's madmen running around Shepherd's Bush, for example, you can't come DaaruSsunnah, can you? If there's war going on, you can't attend the masjid. That's why, effectively, amin and salama, peace and security is established before anything, so that you can eat from its provisions, the thamarat, the fruits, the rizq, the provision that Allah has provided for us. And then he goes on to mention فربط حصول هذه المطالب العالية بعبادته. Thus Allah connected these high aspirations with worship. وحده لا شريك له الذي هو معنى ومقتضى لا إله إلا الله. Singling Him out alone in worship, which is a correct prerequisite for kalimat al-tawheed, the Shahadah, la ilaha illallah. There's no deity worthy of worship in truth except Allah. La ma'budu bihaqqin illa Allah. And then he goes on to mention, now this is a very interesting point. وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ جَعَلْ هَذَا الْبَلَدْ آمِنًا وَاجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدُ الْأَصْنَامِ. So, Ibrahim alayhi salam has mentioned, this is the dua of Ibrahim alayhi salam, a prophet, Khalilullah. He goes on to mention, oh Allah, my Lord, make this, city, a city of security and peace. وَاجْنُبْنِي, and defer me, take me away, وَبَنِيَّ, from my people, and نَعْبُدُ الْأَصْنَامِ, from worshipping the idols. Now look, it goes to show that if Ibrahim alayhi salam, which you all know, is making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's supplicating to his Lord to ask him to be protected from shirk, then who are we? Because everyone, to some extent, is, exposed to shirk. I don't know if you guys are all aware, but, there's a guy in America that fell into this, not just once, but twice, and he's a big Imām amongst them. May Allah protect us from this. So it goes to show that we all are susceptible to falling into shirk, one way or another. May Allah save us from this, minor or major. And as you all know, shirk, which بمعنى نصيب لغة, بمعنى نصيب لغة, shirk, which linguistically kind of translates as portion. That's what you're effectively doing, shirk. Come from, لما تشارك, when you join partners in something, was first manifested at the time of Nuh alayhi salam to an individual called Wad. So before the time of Nuh alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used to wipe nations out by way of sins, dunub. Then the first manifestation of shirk upon the earth happened at the time of Nuh alayhi salam to an individual called Wad. Okay. Number 4, حصول الطمأنينة النفسية والاستقرار الذهني. So, mental reassurance. Mental reassurance and calmness for the one who declares كلمة التوحيد. لمن قال لا إله إلا الله وعمل بمقتضاها. So, mental reassurance and calmness for the one who declares kalima to tawheed and acts by it, carries out the actions, that show he truly believes in it. لأنه يعبد ربا واحدا. That's because he worships one Lord. يعرف مراده وما يرضيه فيفعله. That's because he knows his Lord's needs, not needs, but wants. What his Lord wants of him. وما يرضيه, and that which pleases him. ويعرف ما يسخطه فيجتنبه. And likewise, he knows that which displeases him, and therefore that individual, the true Muslim, he avoids it. بخلاف من يعبد آلهة متعددة. And this is contrary and in opposition to the one who worships many deities. He has several gods here and several gods there. كل واحد منها له مراد. Every god has, a want of some sort, a desire. غير مراد الآخر وله تدبير غير تدبير الآخر. So each having their own desire, each having their own demand and measures. And now brings the ayah. ضرب الله مثلا رجلا فيه شركاء متشاكسون ورجل سلم لرجل هل يستويان مثلا هل يستويان مثلا. So Allah presents an example. A slave owned by quarreling partners. A slave owned by quarreling partners. And another belonging exclusively to one man. Are they equal? So imagine that you've got an individual who belongs to many different owners. And that owner, or owners plural, has many different demands and wishes for that one person. It's very difficult to please. They'll all be fighting amongst each other. And likewise, the man that is, subordinate to one individual, one God. هل يستويان مثلا? Are they equal? No. And he goes on to say, قال ابن القيم Ibn Qayyim in commentary of this parable, هذا مثل ضربه الله للمشرك والموحد. So this parable that Allah has set of the pagan, the polytheist, the one that has, several deities, and the sincere worshipper of Allah. فالمشرك بمنزلة عبد يملكه جماعة. So the pagan is equivalent to the one who has, been owned by a number of owners. متنازعون مختلفون متشاحون. Yeah? All of whom are in dispute and differing and, begrudging to one another. والرجل المتشاكس السيء الخلق. So, the رجل المتشاكس is the one who is vile in manner. فالمشرك لما كان يعبد آلهة شتى شبه بعبد يملكه متنافسون في خدمته لا يمكنه أن يبلغ رضاءهم أجمعين. So he goes on to, say, since the pagan, the polytheist, he worships many gods, multiple gods. He was likened to a slave that is owned by multiple owners who are all, contending and competing with one another for his worship, whilst he is unable to please them all. He's unable to please them all. They all have different desires and wishes. والموحد, so the person of Tawheed, the Muslim, لما كان يعبد الله وحده فمثله كمثل عبد للرجل واحد قد سلم له وعلم مقاصده وعرف الطريق إلى رضائه. So the example of this person, the muwahid, who worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, his parable is that of a slave who has one master who has submitted to him and comes to know of his objectives that he wants from him, and likewise his method in pleasing him. فهو في راحة من تشاحن الخلطاء فيه. Thus, he is at ease from all grudges. بل هو السالم لمالكه من غير تنازع فيه مع رأفة مالكه ورحمته له وشفقته عليه وإحسانه وتوليه المصالح فهو يستوي هذان العبدان. So, in fact, he is exclusively devoted to one master, one Malik, without dispute, without any niza'ah. And in addition to this, meaning in addition to the compassion, the shafaqah, the rahmah, the mercy, the care and being good to his master bestows upon him these things, as well as assuming full responsibility of his interests. Yeah? And he goes on to say, number 5, حصول السمو والرأفة لأهل لا إله إلا الله في الدنيا والآخرة. So now, and obviously, like I mentioned, the influence of La ilaha illallah upon the society is attaining high regard and rank within the worldly life, this life, and in the hereafter. Meaning for those that adhere to kalimat al-tawheed, La ilaha illallah. And then he goes on to say the ayah, هُنَفَاءَ لِلَّهِ غَيْرَ مُشْرِكِينَ بِهِ. Yeah? Inclining to Allah alone, inclining to Allah alone, not committing any shirk with Him. وَمَنْ يُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ فَكَأَنَّمَا خَرَّ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. Whoever commits shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's as though he had fallen from the sky. فَتَخْتَفُهُ الطَّيْرُ. And then he is snatched by the birds. أو تهوي به الريح في مكان سحيق. Or the wind carried him down into a remote place. Or the wind carried him down to a remote place. فدلت الآية على أن التوحيد علو وارتفاع. So the ayah is indicative of the fact that Tawheed is something lofty and holds a high place within Islam. وأن الشرك حبوط والسفول والسقوط. And that shirk is something lowly and despicable. Ibn al-Qayyim goes on to say, شبه الإيمان والتوحيد في علوه وسعته وشرفه بالسماء التي هي مسعده ومهبطه. So he resembled Iman and Tawheed in its loftiness, expansiveness, and nobility to the sky, its place it rises to, and from where it descends to the earth, and likewise. وشبه تارك الإيمان والتوحيد بالساقط من السماء إلى أسفل السافلين من حيث التضييق الشديد والآلام المتراكمة. Yeah. So he goes on to say, he resembled the one who abandons Iman and Tawheed with the one who falls from the sky to the deepest depths from the perspective of its severe constrictions and compound pains. والطير التي تخطف أعضاءه وتمزقه كل ممزق بالشياطين التي يرسلها الله وتزعجه. طيب, and he goes on to say, and the birds that snatch at the body parts and tear them to pieces are like the devils. Yeah, they're like the devils that are let loose by Allah and incline them with evil and disturb him until his, suspected demise. والريح التي تحوي به في مكان سحيق. So the wind that which blows him to a distant place, هو حواه الذي يحمله ويحمله على الإلقاء نفسه في أسفل مكان وعبده عن السماء. So as for the wind that blows him to a distant place, مكان سحيق, is his own desires that lead him to the furthest and lowest part away from the heavens. Okay. Number 6 now. عصمة الدم والمال والعرض. عصمة الدم والمال والعرض. Meaning the preservation of one's blood, mal, wealth, والعرض, and honor. Meaning the sanctity of blood, property and honor. And then he brings the hadith, أمرت أن أقاتل الناس. So I've been commanded to fight the people حتى يقولوا لا إله إلا الله, up until they say لا إله إلا الله. فإذا قالوها, and if they say it, عصموا مني دماؤهم وأموالهم إلا بحقها. And if they say it, they have been sanctified in their blood, property, except by its right. But there's tafsil to this now. We're going to go into the details in regards to it. وقولوا بحقها معناه, and in regards to its rights. معناه, its meaning, أنهم إذا قالوها وامتنعوا عن القيام بحقها وهو أداء ما تقتضيه من التوحيد. So except by its right. If they say but refuse to implement it and uphold the pillar of Islam, it will not be any means of protection for their property or blood. Rather, they are fought. وتؤخذ أموالهم غنيمة للمسلمين كما فعل بهم النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام وخلفائه. So likewise, their wealth is taken as booty for the Muslims, as the Prophet, peace be upon him, did and his successors. And this is a very particular narration to war. In war, in harb, obviously we're not in war now, but this is the condition in which the messengers laid out up until they say La ilaha illallah. Then we stop. Yeah? هذا ولهذه الكلمة آثار عظيمة. By way of this very statement has, powerful effects على الفرد والجماعة في العبادات والمعاملات والآداب والأخلاق. So it has powerful effects upon society, the individual, and in regards to acts of worship, forms of transactions and manners. Okay, so that's the introduction, to be honest. That's more or less it. But we're going to go into that particular narration, أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يقولوا لا إله إلا الله. فإذا قالوها, and if they say it, عصموا مني دماءهم وأموالهم. Yeah? So their wealth and their property and their blood is safeguarded. I just hope I brought it, subhanAllah. طيب. Okay. So these are some extracts. These fawaid are, taken from several places elsewhere. So قال شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية. So Ibn Taymiyyah is mentioned in regards to this very narration, تعليقا, in commentary. وقول النبي أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله. So this is another narration. So I've been commanded to fight the people until they say the Shahadah. وأن محمدا رسول الله ويقيم الصلاة ويؤتي الزكاة. And that they, say that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And they establish the prayer and give the zakat. مراده, its intent. قتال المحاربين الذين أذن الله في قتالهم. So, it's in regards to those that fight you, on account of your religion. الذين أذن الله في قتالهم. That which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made permissible for you to fight. And then he goes on to say, لم يرد قتال المعاهدين الذين أمر الله بوفاء عهدهم. This is not the intent of those who have a contract with you. And this is found in Majmu' al-Fatawa. وقال أيضا القتال هو لمن يقاتلنا. Fighting is in regards to those that fight you. إذا أردنا إظهار الدين الله كما قال تعالى. And that's if we want to manifest the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he mentions the ayah وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ. And fight in the way of Allah, those that fight you. وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا. And do not transgress. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Allah does not love those who transgress. And carrying on in regards to that. So the Quran has outlined the base rule for fighting. What is it? That they fight you on account of your religion. And the relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims, should be sound, coexistence. And that's based upon the ayah لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. Allah has not ordered you that you deal, basically He has not forbidden you to deal justly with those that do not fight you on account of your religion or try to exit you from your houses. Rather, to be just and good to them, as Allah loves those who are just and are good. So Ibn Kathir, a classical Salafi scholar, he stated in his tafsir of the verse, meaning that you are benevolent towards them and deal justly with them. And as we know, justice is to give everyone their due right. Slightly different from equality. Equality just means give everyone the same. For example, if you've got a family of 5, and then you've got a family of 3, you can't give the family of 5 2 chickens because everyone else, for example, gets 2 chickens in the area. The family of 5 need more, don't they, to eat? So equality means giving everyone the same thing, whereas justice means that you give everyone what they're due. والعدل ضد الظلم. And justice is the opposite of oppression, as you all know. And lastly, Ibn Jarir al-Tabari explains in his tafsir that there were a number of opinions, iddatu ara, in regards to this particular verse. And he mentions among them, the first one, that the verse was particular to only those Muslims who were residing in Mecca, خصوصا لأهل Mecca, but had not yet emigrated to Medina. This is one opinion. Then this verse relates to people outside of Mecca who had not emigrated to Medina. It's another opinion. And that the verse was regarding the pagans of Mecca who did not fight the Muslims nor expel them from their homes, as the ayah says. But that it was later abrogated with the command to fight the pagans on account of their violation of the truth. So obviously when they violated the truth, their ahd, then that came to an end, and then to fight them was the command to come forth. And then the Tabari explains the correct viewpoint, stating upon this, and this is the most correct opinion, the rajih, the most preponderant opinion, that all of these sayings, all of these aqwal, according to ayah, لا ينهاكم الله على الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not forbid you to do justly with those that have not fought you on account of your religion. It pertains to all factions from the various aqa'id and religions, so from the various beliefs and faiths, that you behave good towards them and that you are just regarding them, because Allah generalized the saying, وَلَمْ يُخْرِجُوكُم مِّن دِيَارِكُم, and they haven't exited you from your houses, أَن تَبَرُّوهُمْ وَتُقْسِطُوا إِلَيْهِمْ, and that you are good to them and just towards them. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُقْسِطِينَ. Yeah. He said they can all apply. Yeah. Wallahu a'lam. How long has that been now? Alhamdulillah. That's enough. That's sufficient. Jazakumullah khair. If there's any questions? No. In fact, we'll just leave it there. Barakallahu feekum. So we'll keep it minimal in terms of when it comes to the muqaddimah. But inshallah, next week we will start the conditions, and it will be the first condition, shart al-awwal, which is ilm, as you all know. And we're going to go for it wajizan, concisely, and we're going to give fawaid from one angle and fawaid from another angle. So jazakumullah khair for all attending. Wa sallallahu sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.